Hi everyone, welcome back to Ace Advice. I hope you're all doing well. Today I have an amazing guest speaker for you all, Francisco Montoya. He is currently a coach at the Manchester Athletic Club, and he has been such a big part as to why I'm the player I am today. I went to Manchester Athletic Club when I was younger every single summer, and every single time I had a private lesson with Francisco, and he always made something about my game so much better. I have so much to thank him for, so I'm so excited to have him on here. Before I bring him on, I just want to give a little bit of a bio about him that's on the Manchester Athletic Club website because his, I guess you can say, resume is amazing. So I just want to share it all with you. Francisco has been in the coaching side of the game for the past 25 years. He spent 10 years at the Nick Bollettieri Tennis Academy in Florida, where he went from hitting partner to traveling coach to head coach to the leader of organizing the international tournament schedule for all the top players in the program. During his 10 years at the Nick Bollettieri Tennis Academy, he worked directly with elite players such as Venus and Serena Williams, Maria Sharapova, Tommy Haas, Mariana Lucic, Paul-Henri Mathieu, Dustin Brown, and many others. Francisco started the Manchester Athletic Club Tennis Academy in partnership with Nick Bollettieri in 2003, and the program has developed a reputation of excellence in New England and the entire United States. During his years in New England, he has received multiple awards that include Coach of the Year, Pro of the Year, and the William Friedman Award by the USPTA and the USTA. The MAC Tennis Academy has helped over 150 players reach their goal of playing college tennis in the United States, and some of those players have gone to compete in the professional circuit. Francisco's belief is to maintain a full commitment to a program that values teamwork and a family-oriented feeling for all coaches, players, and parents. I love this description. I think it sums up so much of what he's done in his coaching career, and I'm so excited to discuss all of this with him. Francisco!
Stranger,
Hi!
how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man.
Thank you so much for doing this. I was so excited when I was thinking of coaches. I'm like, I have to have Francisco. All right. So my first question is, when did you start playing tennis, and what kind of drew you to the game?
My dad was a pretty good tennis player. He was not a teaching pro or anything, but he was, a very good amateur player. And so I was always around tennis. However, maybe because he was good and he was kind of known, it was hard for me to really get into it because I wasn't.
Right.
So I was always around tennis. I played some tournaments when I was 11 and didn't do so well. So I quit for a couple of years. And I came back when I was 13. So it's hard to know when I started. I think I was the kind of kid that even though I wasn't playing tennis, if I went to the club, I knew how to keep score. I knew who was good, who wasn't. I understood. I knew the coaches' names, all that stuff. But really, I think that when I really started, like 12 and a half, 13 is when I really got into it, and
Yeah.
I haven't stopped since.
And when you were you playing to go to college on tennis or to go pro?
So when I started competing at almost 13, there were some guys, Anya, that they were so good to my eyes. They looked so good. They were so much better than me at that age that I think that I just wanted to be as good as them, So I didn't have a bigger vision of where my game could go. And I think when I got to be 17 and 18 and I sort of reached their level, the good, so like a good national level and a little bit of international, I was somewhere happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
So primarily when I started realizing I was playing to go to college, but I think I had a little bit more in the tank, but my mind didn't, my mind was a little satisfied when I reached a certain level.
What kind of player did you emulate your style of play? Like, who was the player that you looked at to like, that's how I want to play?
So when I was, getting to play is when Boris Becker and Stefan Edberg were sort of at their peak in 88, 89, 90. They were the ones winning Wimbledon and stuff, and they served them volley, and they had one-handed backhands. So I think those two had a big influence. And then after that, it was like Sampras and Patrick Rafter that also, like, they came to the net, but they had one-handed backhand, so they, sort of build a game thinking of those guys.
Yeah.
But Stefan Edberg, I mean, he was incredible to watch. Just a gentleman, great athlete, great volleys, resilient. He found ways how to win on clay and on hard and grass and everything, even though his game was suited more for grass courts. So I think he was the one that the most, yeah.
Yeah. And were you more of like a singles or doubles player? What did you enjoy to play more?
Doubles wasn't like as big. When we had nationals, we had doubles, but the main target, doubles was sort of like at the end of the day after the singles matches were done, right? Like now there's a little bit more to it. I did a little bit better in doubles than in singles, but obviously most of the training and most of the stuff was targeted towards singles.
Yeah.
Right now, there are two Colombian guys that are number one in the world in doubles. They won the US Open and they won Wimbledon last year. So I think there's a movement now in Colombia where kids are, training more doubles and everything because they're seeing, Cabal and Farah, in the finals of Wimbledon. So there's more for that. But back in the day, it was important, but it wasn't as important. I think I enjoyed doubles more, but, you spend 85% of your time getting ready for singles.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I definitely, like, in junior tennis, there was always like the singles was the main event, and then doubles was like at night, like after everyone was already tired.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
everything. So how can you talk a little bit about how you transitioned from playing all these tournaments nationally and a little bit internationally to becoming a coach? Like, what made you decide you wanted to be a coach?
So I had a younger sister that was sort of like was a very, very good player. She was about 4 years younger than me. And at some point when I was 16 and a half, 17, I went to my dad and I said, that I wanted to get a job on the side a little bit to make a little bit of money. I threw him out some ideas and he was like, oh, you don't need to do that. You don't need to, go wait tables at a restaurant. Like, you're working on your tennis, this and that. And so he said, if you play with your sister, I'll pay you. You don't need to coach or nothing. Just get on the court and hit balls with her. Be really good for her because, you're an older guy and everything. But he said, but the only condition is that, like you can pretty much you can't talk to her, because then you guys are going to get in a fight and stuff.
Right.
I was like, okay, as long as you're paying me, I'll keep my mouth shut. So, I started playing with her, getting paid at the end of every week, say 5-6 hours. That money it was good for a teenager to have in my pocket. And then because I was keeping my mouth shut, we actually started getting along much better. And then she started sort of asking me little questions here and there, like, hey, what do you think against that girl? Should I drop shot her, or, is her backhand better than her forehand? And I'll be like, oh, I started giving her little tips. But again, it always had to be that the question had to come from her, because I wasn't going to get in trouble, get my job in trouble, and so I would give her tips and she would do well, and say I took her to a national tournament and I was a 17-year-old and I'm just there, like just being the older brother, but I'm, getting along well with her and everything. She would do well. She, got to the finals. And I was like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
Like, she did well, and I told her this and that, and she won that match. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, oh, who knows, right? And so I started, the little things started going into my mind, like, maybe this would be a really cool thing to do if you could make a living out of that. Unfortunately, in Colombia, tennis coaching is not a well-paid profession. It's very difficult. There's not that many good jobs in the country. So even though it sounded cool, it wasn't something you thought about. But so when I went to Bolletieris, because I went there when I was 19, sort of trying to decide if I was going to transition to college tennis, I met all these cool guys, that were coaches there, and they lived in nice houses, they drove nice cars, they seemed like they had a cool life, this guy was coming back from coaching these players in Europe and this and that. And I'm like, oh, this is nice. I'm 19, but I don't mind doing that, you know.
Yeah.
So things started to like, like the dots started to connect, like the feeling of my sister doing well in tournaments because of the relationship and the advice and everything. And then he started to think about like what other guys were doing out on the road and living good, what seemed like good lives when they were good lives. Started giving me that idea, and so that's kind of very quickly I found myself just getting more satisfaction from the coaching side than from the playing side in those early years. I decided not to head to school and to stay at the academy and work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So when you first went to Bolletary, you went as a player, not as like to be a coach originally.
correct. They had a program. It was like they gave you a place to stay, they gave you clothes, they gave you food, and you would train half of the day and then you would help out the other half of the day, whether you were coaching or you were a hitting partner or whatever they told you to do. I mean, sometimes they told us, you got to take the kids to Disney, and that's what we did. So we there were 15, 20 guys in that program, and we were helping out a lot of the coaches and all that stuff, and that was a pretty good recruiting place for the academy. A lot of the good coaches that the academies had, they started there.
Yeah.
They were doing that stuff, and some transition to go to college. Some there's one that is one of Roger Federer's agents right now. There's college coaches, there's other guys that are at the academy still. It's just like from that crew and from that environment, a lot of really good teaching talent came out.
Wow. That's really interesting. So when you first started to become a full-time coach, were you training more like juniors or did you start training professionals right away?
More, it was like players that were transitioning into the tour, but they were very young.
Okay.
Yeah. So like one of my first assignments was a 15-year-old girl from South America that was like the number one South American player, and she was 15 and she turned pro. And so that was one of my first things. It was just to take care everywhere and do the groundwork in the smaller professional tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
And then they became kind of like the niche, like those players that were making that transition. And then most of the times, unfortunately, when they got good, they left.
Right. Yeah.
And it was fine. Like I had it always very clear that I worked for the academy, and not for the individual players. I always felt that there was a little bit more stability, and I liked my group of coaches and the friends that I had and everything. I never wanted to take the sort of like the gypsy route where you just take on one player and that's the only thing you're doing. So even when I was working individually with a player, whenever we were home, I would like go out of my way to help out with the academy, because I wanted the academy to feel like, no, I'm one of the coaches here.
So what does kind of like an average day look like when you're training those up and coming professional players? Do you do like how many hours on the court, how many hours fitness, kind of what does the day look like?
It's an hour and a half to 2 hours on the court in the mornings. Whether you have a small group or you have an individual player and you bring a hitting partner or something, there might be a little bit of fitness there towards the end. And then in the afternoons, on a normal week, you're looking for matches and point play for the afternoon. And most of the fitness will take place at the end of the day, so that because otherwise sometimes if you do the fitness earlier, you beat them up pretty hard, and then they don't have the energy to produce the quality on the afternoon session, for example.
Yeah.
But these days, more and more, like the program and those levels now works around the fitness program.
Mm-hmm.
So if you say, look, we have a tournament in 3 weeks, then it's kind of like the fitness trainer designs a little bit of what he or she is planning on doing during those 3 weeks, and then you accommodate your tennis around it a lot when it's very specialized like that. But for the most part, it's a couple hours in the morning, an hour and a half or so in the afternoon, and a good hour to an hour and a half of fitness. You probably break it down into the morning and afternoon as well.
Got
But then that still includes all day though, because when you say you're gonna play for 2 hours, you're literally there a half hour before warming up, getting ready. When you say you play in an hour and a half in the afternoon, when you're done, it's like a 20-minute cool down after that of stretching, of foam rolling. Once you're saying like I'm turning pro, like this is where I'm going, it's an all day event.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're either on or you're off. Like okay, or you just have the afternoon off and you don't even show your face.
Right. Yeah, because at that point, it's like it's your job. Like,
Yeah, exactly. It's totally, it's a job in every way. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
So I know that you also trained you worked with like players such as like Venus and Serena, Sharapova, Tommy Haas, Dustin Brown, like some really, really, you know,
Yeah, pretty
successful
cool, right?
players.
Yeah.
Um, how was that like? And I guess maybe, yeah, talk about how that's like, because I think that's just so cool.
Well, the thing, Anya, is that I spent 10 years at the academy, and all those names that you're talking about, when I experienced them, they were kids.
Right. Okay.
So I just worked with kids,
Yeah.
and what I saw across the net was another kid. The fact that, later on in life, you're watching Dustin Brown beat Nadal at Wimbledon is like, wow, but again, he was a 16-year-old, like,
Yeah.
a very good 16-year-old, but still a 16-year-old. He didn't have a driver license. He didn't have, you know, money in the bank yet. He probably, everything was very, very normal. Somewhere a little bit better, somewhere a little bit worse, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Venus and Serena, it was funny because I got to the academy and my English wasn't, sort of good enough at the beginning, and they kind of didn't know what to do with me, but they knew I could play. And they said, you know what, just, tomorrow 1:30, just go to court 41 and 42, you and this other guy, his name was Andreas, the guy from Switzerland. He was a very good player too. And you can play with these two girls that are there with their dad. And we went, and we played with these two African American girls, and we played with them for like 3 months, every day at 1:30. And it was Venus and Serena, but like at the time, it was like, it was just an 11 and a 13-year-old. Like that's just what it was.
Yeah.
Um, and they didn't drive the parents didn't drive a nice car. They didn't live in a big apartment yet. They had, Reebok was giving them clothes, and Yonex was probably giving them the rackets, and IMG was helping with the training, but that was it. They weren't like,
Yeah.
there was nothing weird about it.
Yeah. Was there something, because you did work with them obviously before they became like super successful, but was there something that you saw in them that you're like, I think that they have what it takes, or did they just seem kind of like everyone else at the time?
Well, at the same time that they were there was like, like Anna Kurnikova was also at the academy. There was another girl, Christina Triska, at the academy. There were other kids, similar ages, and so it was hard because they were also good.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe because they were girls, but they didn't play each other.
Yeah.
We could never like even think about organizing a match, like Kurnikova against Venus, like that was not going to happen.
Right, right.
That was not going to happen. And then later on with, Sharapova and Jankovic or Golovin, or, like, no, those matches weren't going to take place. That's just very clear. But Venus looked incredible.
Mm.
I mean, she was incredible. She could work. She was tall. She was strong. Serena looked a little bit. I mean, she was really good, but she looked a little bit all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Harder to get her to focus. Harder with certain things. Wanted to just kind of like was finding herself. Everywhere she wanted to play a game of like a 17-year-old, but she was 11, so she couldn't. So it made it not look that good.
Right. Wow.
Which Venus was already like 5'10", 5'11", so she already played the game that she was going to play.
Yeah. Well, that's super interesting to hear about kind of the differences between the two when they were younger.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Wow. So I think you also were a traveling coach for a little bit, right?
Yeah, I did a lot of traveling. Yeah.
How was that kind of whole experience?
You know, if you're in your 20s, it's an awesome experience. You know, you learn so much at the levels that I did it, you know, because it was mostly with junior players, transitioning to the pros and everything. I I found it so cool because, you know, the tournaments were good, but it wasn't fancy, you know. So we had to share rooms in hotels. We had to be in, you know, in Egypt or in, you know, or in Dubai or like, you know, in Europe all over, and we had to go, you know, take a train from Milan to Paris, you know, like, and sleep in the train, because that way we spend the night. We save one night of hotel because we slept in the train, you know,
Wow.
things like that. You know, when I look back, that those days were awesome. You know, they were so different. You know, you're counting every dollar that you had because you got to make it work for 6 weeks, and there was no fanciness, you know, and that's what's cool, because some of the players, you know, like Dustin Brown came out of. There's so many stories about a guy like him, you know, coming out of that, you know, just this, you know, how much he's learned from the struggle.
Yeah.
Uh, so those years were awesome, you know, and now, you know, I have a wife and 3 kids, and you know, I finished work and I better hurry home because it's like, where were you, and this and that. So uh, you know, those days when I used to go away for 5-6 weeks at a time and be like, okay, you know, see you guys in 5 weeks, you know.
Right.
Those days are long gone.
I
Long
love
gone.
that.
So
um,
I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I did it because life comes around, and life gets busy, and you start paying bills and drinking more coffee, and you know,
exactly.
so you when you can take advantage, you have to. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So then you transitioned, and I think you started Manchester Athletic Club Tennis Academy,
Yes.
MAC. What made you decide to start MAC?
You know, so I had been at the academy for 10 years already. um, and 10 years is 10 years, right? And then you know, there's something itching inside you that says, you know, can I do this, you know, can I do this myself, you know, like, can I, you know, like, I feel like I learned a lot. And you know, I wasn't plateau or anything, but I was like definitely more open to possibilities. And there were a couple of possibilities to go into being an assistant coach for some good colleges and everything, and that was kind of interesting. And then my friend who was the tennis manager at the academy called me in the office, and they said, you know, they were looking for somebody to represent the Bollettieri name in Boston. They said Boston, and I was like, you know, what is it? You know, it's a nice, you know, I guess a club in a nice area, and they pay well. And yeah, and I said, oh well, I can do it. And my friend is like, no, it's not for you, man. It's like, if you know of someone. And I was like, hey, Boston sounds pretty good. Like, I've never been to Boston. and
Yeah.
and so, you know, initially, like, you know, the program was called the Mac Bollettieri for like the first couple of years, while the program sort of got off the ground and everything. It was a little bit crazy, you know, when I first moved here. I never came up here for an interview. I didn't know, you know, I've never, you know, never been up here. And you know, we didn't have a lot of good players at all, man. And so it was it was like, oh my God, did I blow it, you know,
Right.
did I mess up, you know, like, what the heck, you know, sort of said to myself, like, you know, just shut up, give it, you know, give it 5-6 months, work your butt off, and let's see what happens. And then, you know, slowly, you know, one kid after the other came. Some of the younger ones that were starting to look good started to put more time into their game. And then slowly, what you do is you start bringing new coaches, you know, like every time that I got really busy, then we bring another coach. And you know, and then you have a little bit of a team, and then you know, then another person, and now, you know, we have 10 really good coaches. You know, I really feel like we have 10 really good coaches, and a lot of them have been here for, you know, 10 plus years. So that also that's not usually the norm in coaching. There's a lot of turnover, there's a lot of changes, but the guys here, they're very invested in the program. They like their lifestyle, and we work our butts off. But you know I don't think I would like to live my day any different than I do.
Yeah. No,
Hmm.
that's such a success story, kind of how you weren't expecting to have such a like successful tennis academy. 5, 6 months later, you actually started to get some good players, and
Yeah, and slowly, and people would come and they would say, can we take a lesson with you? And I would teach him a lesson, and they say, okay, I want to take a lesson with you every day. And
yeah,
I'd be like, and no, I can't teach you every day. I teach you once a week, but then you can come to the academy. It's like, no, we don't like groups. We don't like academies. I'm like, well, that's okay then. Then I'll teach you once a week. It's like, oh, but we want a lesson every day. I'm like, no, I cannot teach you a lesson every day. I'm not going to, you know. And so some people gave the program a chance, and some people didn't. Some people simply, said like, this is not what we want. I'm like, okay, we're gonna stand up for what. I mean, that was all I had seen for 10 years in Florida, so that's what I knew worked, and so we stuck to it, and so it works.
yeah. And
It,
I
wo-
just
it,
want to say, obviously, Francisco, if I lived in Boston, I would want a lesson from you every day, also.
yeah, but, sorry, once a week only, man, Anya. I think I
um,
used to do twice a week when you guys came, but that's because you guys were coming from all the way in Arizona.
right, right. We got a
Yeah.
little bit of special treatment, I guess.
Yes.
um, So, did you take the way that you trained players in voluntary? Did you take that model and used it in Mac, or did you change anything?
So I've had like, sort of three schools of thought. One was the way I grew up, what I did, because I had to struggle to get better because I wasn't always good. So I had to, you know, uh, with my dad, we kind of came to the conclusion that if I wanted to get as good as some of the guys, I needed to work harder than them because they were better than me. So unless if I just worked as hard as they did, like, um, at the end I wasn't going to be able to catch him. So that took one school. The years at the academy were incredible. Um, those years were incredible. I mean, there's 25 really, really good coaches over there year round. So you're learning all the time. There's a lot of different nationalities from those coaches.
Mm-hmm.
So they bring a background and stuff. Obviously, the Nick Bollettieri himself, like his style and how he likes doing things, it makes a big difference. I think that's the biggest component of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
But then besides my background, those years at the academy is just, you're out there teaching, and so you're learning all the time.
Yeah,
You can't help it. You have to evolve. The game is evolved. You evolve. Um, you see what works, but more so than the system is the voluntary style. Like, the importance of intensity, the importance of competition, and of just dedication. Just the dedication to every day. Yeah.
yeah. Do you have
Hmm.
an opinion on homeschooling versus going to school?
I am a fan of online schooling.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think that it's hard if you're doing it at home. It's hard if your direct supervisor is sort of your parent. If you're sitting, in the living room table, doing your homework. I think that's a little bit scary. I think that you need to create an environment, or you do need to do it somewhere where you are a part of something.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it can happen. I think it can happen. I don't even like the sound of homeschool. you know
Yeah,
I think you can take online courses, and you can, and you can keep progressing, and learn what you need to learn for the most part. And the main thing is, you need to understand whether, because there's some school programs that you are a student, you know and then second, you are the athlete, right? And
right.
so all your athletic capabilities need to work around the schoolwork. and school doesn't have much flexibility to accommodate you. But I think that once you reach a certain level of play in whatever sport, you're an athlete that needs to take care of his or her education, and so you need a school system that gives you the flexibility so that you can train, so that you can travel, so because you are part of you, you're something else. You're not just the regular student that they're trying to keep busy in the afternoon with field hockey or with football or baseball. Like, no, you are the baseball player that actually needs the extra time, or needs to be able to leave to school a little bit earlier so that he can get stuff done. So but I do believe that you can always negotiate. Like, you have to start very early communicating with your teachers and with your school, and making them understand that you have big goals for your sport and your development, and that as long as you're keeping up your grades and you're learning, that they let you do some things. I don't believe that you should just surrender. I think that you gotta always go and ask. Go and ask.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And how about like also transitioning from college to pro sports, or going directly from high school and committing to go pro? Do you think that it's smart for people to go to college first?
The way the game is right now, there are benchmarks that you can work with, and you can make the decision based on those benchmarks.
Yeah.
So, and they're written in definitely places, but if you're, it's sort of like if you're 16, or if you're in your first year of the 18s and you're a guy, and you're already sort of top 20 in the world in the juniors, and you're in the first year of the 18s or on the second year of the 16s, you're sort of showing that you have those kind of skills.
Right.
And so potentially you could give yourself the chance before college. But if you haven't hit those benchmarks, the pro tour shouldn't be like not an option. It is an option, but you gotta do some college first.
Right.
And obviously now that that I have 3 kids, I mean, I think a college education is very important, or the ability to have a college education. And if you're an elite player and you can, go and do at least a year or two at Duke or at Northwestern or whatever, like any of those really good schools, why not? Like,
Right. Yeah.
be very difficult to turn that down. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it affects negatively too much the professional pathway. Because I think the colleges, the coaches are doing a better job every time, and they have good budgets and good programs, and obviously great facilities and everything. So you can keep on going. You're definitely going to keep improving.
Yeah.
Even all the way to like the D3 programs and everything. Like, I don't think we are in a situation where those guys aren't getting the training and the competition and everything. I think it's up to the player too.
Yeah. It definitely comes a lot from within, for sure. Like
Yeah.
training and everything. Yeah.
But that's fine. I mean, it should come from within anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So just my last question is just, what's your favorite thing about being a coach?
I don't know, Anya. I look forward to Mondays. I like my weekends with the family and everything. But I start itching. I said, I want Monday to come back. When I sit down, I have ideas, drills in my mind, things that I want to do. Some kid that I want to make sure they get a better experience than they did the last time, or somebody that I know that lost, and I like to, pick them back up and everything. My favorite thing is, in Spanish, it's called destetar. And destetar is when, the cow has the baby, and the cow feeds the baby for about, 9 months to a year. And then 9 months to a year after that is goodbye. Like, there's no more milk for you. Forget it. Go,
Yeah.
go and grow.
Right.
And honest to God, like, I love my day to day. I like my days, but like seeing the kids grow and live, you know,
Yeah.
it's actually it's very cool for me. Like some people have a harder time saying goodbye, but like I'm happy you're out there. You know, I'm happy like you're out there and you're doing your thing in college and being a productive person in ways, and still having an affinity with tennis and everything, and your sister or Julia Newman or the kids that when I started with, and we have kids now that have kids, you know. Uh,
Crazy.
so it makes you feel like a grandfather a little bit, but in any case, a 45-year-old grandfather. But in any case, like I like that. I
Yeah.
I like the fact that they have moved on, and that they're doing their things, and then so that's what I like. I like seeing people go places, not always just win tournaments, but go places.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that. That's so amazing. That's a great answer.
Get rid of them, right?
And then you're off. Bye-bye.
Yeah, you're off. Like, listen,
Yeah.
like Bill Belichick says, next man up. Like who, who's next? Let's do it again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. You answered all my questions.
There you go.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. All right.
All right. I'll
You're
talk to
welcome.
you
Bye,
later.
Anna.
All right.
Have a great day.
All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this interview with Francisco. I sure did. He has had such an amazing coaching career and is going to continue to have one. I'm sure of it. And obviously, if you guys are looking for a great coach, check out Manchester Athletic Club. There's so many amazing coaches there, all thanks to Francisco's hard work. So, yeah, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe. And I'll see you guys soon.